Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're diving into a really fascinating intersection that, honestly, you just don't hear discussed in a structured way very often. We're looking at the intense, highly scrutinized, and usually very secular world of the entertainment industry and exploring how some of its absolute biggest figures navigate that world while holding on to traditional religious faith. Specifically, we're going to examine how Catholic celebrities balance the intense demands of Hollywood with their personal beliefs. We'll be drawing directly from a variety of interviews and profiles to see how this works in real life. And let me tell you, it is an incredibly compelling dynamic. Okay, let's just get right into it. This is the core question we want to unpack today. Can the bright lights of Hollywood and the ancient traditions of faith actually coexist? I mean, we so often assume the entertainment industry is completely devoid of traditional religion, right? Like they're total opposites. But as we look at the data and the personal testimonies of the stars themselves, a very different, much more nuanced picture begins to emerge. And wow, it is an absolutely staggering, incredibly diverse roster of megastars. It really surprises people to see the sheer breadth of this phenomenon. You have Lady Gaga, who was actually raised Catholic and attended the convent of the Sacred Heart. Action icon Arnold Schwarzenegger emphasizes that his upbringing gave him what he calls a servant's heart. Leonardo DiCaprio has actually sat down with Pope Francis to discuss environmentalism. Legendary director Martin Scorsese, he seriously considered the priesthood before he ever picked up a camera. Selena Gomez actively blends her Catholic upbringing with her modern worship. And late-night host Jimmy Fallon was an altar boy who still fondly talks about the incense and that unique feeling he got from being in the church. So we're not just talking about one specific type of celebrity here. This spans music, action, comedy, directing, the whole shebang.
Section 1. Faith in the Limelight, the Hollywood Spectrum.
And this brilliantly illustrates a really important point. This connection to faith in Hollywood isn't just a monolith. It exists on a very, very wide spectrum. On one side, you've got someone like Selena Gomez, who actively practices her faith today, wore a promise ring for years, and intentionally blends her traditional Catholic roots with her contemporary worship at Hillsong Church. But then, on the flip side, we have George Clooney. He was an altar boy who did the old-school Latin masses. But today, well, his connection is strictly cultural. He's openly said that while he doesn't hold those specific religious beliefs anymore, he respects whatever beliefs people have, as long as they focus on just not hurting others. It's a perfect example of how two massive stars can process the exact same religious upbringing in completely different ways.
Section 2. Nicole Kidman's Roots, from Convent Dreams to the Red Carpet.
Let's look at how this plays out in a star's daily life, starting with Academy Award winner Nicole Kidman. Her connection to Catholicism runs surprisingly deep. I mean, think about this for a second. One of the absolute most famous actresses in the world almost took a totally different path. She was taught by the Sisters of Mercy as a kid, and she's admitted in interviews that she loved the idea of being a nun. She was incredibly drawn to that life. Obviously, she didn't end up going that route, but it really goes to show just how foundational those early teachings were to shaping her identity.
And today, her religious practices are still very active. She was raised in an Irish Catholic family, and to this day wears a crucifix gifted to her by her grandmother. She attends Mass regularly. She goes to confession. When she married country music star Keith Urban back in 2006, they made sure to do it in a Catholic ceremony. Even though she had a period in her life where she fell away from the church, most notably during her previous marriage where she practiced Scientology, she stated that today, Catholicism is what guides her. It basically serves as this intense personal grounding mechanism for her amidst all the absolute chaos of the entertainment industry. But, maintaining that kind of traditional grounding doesn't exactly come without some social friction. Kidman noted, "That's how we are raising our children. Keith has his own beliefs, but he comes too. A lot of my friends tease me." I find this absolutely fascinating. It highlights the stark reality that practicing traditional faith in elite Hollywood circles isn't exactly the norm, right? It's rare enough that she actually faces light ridicule from her own peers just for raising her kids in the church, yet she sticks to it. Section 3. Patricia Heaton's grounded success. Family first.
Now, Emmy winner Patricia Heaton, who you probably know from massive sitcom hits like Everybody Loves Raymond and The Middle, uses her faith as a really specific framework to balance her huge career and her family life. She actually outlines a very precise sequence of events that she firmly believes saved her from the typical tragic pitfalls of Hollywood. First, she made a conscious, deliberate decision to put God at the center of her life, realizing that the sheer blinding ambition of acting just couldn't be her only drive. Second, she got married and started having her 4 children. Third, and she sees this as pure divine providence, she only found massive Hollywood success after these personal priorities were fully aligned. And fourth, because that success came later in life, she believes with total certainty that she avoided the substance abuse and massive ego issues that she admits probably would have destroyed her if she had gotten famous in her 20s. And that super strong family focus comes with a wonderfully relatable, grounded parenting style. She admitted, "It's important to let them figure out life without us hovering over them all the time. So I'm kind of an anti-helicopter parent." She very intentionally separates her high-profile identity as a famous celebrity from her role as a mother, letting her kids make their own mistakes completely out of the spotlight.
But she absolutely infuses those values into the projects she champions in Hollywood, too. She and her husband produced a film called Unexpected, which uses humor to explore the really heavy emotional realities of infertility. For Heaton, this is all about putting truth with an eternal perspective out into the culture. She thinks the faith community needs to create content that is highly nuanced and sophisticated, tackling complex, real-life issues rather than just, preaching at the audience.
Section 4. Jim Caviezel's devout vocation, suffering for the craft.
Now, what's really interesting about his approach is that if George Clooney represents the purely cultural end of our spectrum, Jim Caviezel represents the absolute most intense, career-defining devotion on the total opposite end. For him, acting and faith are completely inseparable. When he was reading the script for Paul, Apostle of Christ, the core theme that jumped out to him and actually convinced him to take the role of St. Luke was that love is a greater motivator than fear. He approaches his roles not just as acting jobs, but as vital opportunities to explore and project deep theological truths. We can see this most clearly in how he prepared for his iconic role as Jesus in The Passion of the Christ. This wasn't just learning lines and hitting his marks, it was a total spiritual immersion. He attended Mass daily, he received the Eucharist, went to confession, prayed the Rosary, and engaged in incredibly heavy scripture study. He treats his acting craft as a literal religious vocation. And man, that commitment came with an intense physical toll. While they were filming the crucifixion scenes in freezing temperatures, Caviezel actually suffered from hypothermia. Yet through all of that brutal physical suffering, his internal focus remained entirely spiritual. He recalls praying while up on the cross, "I don't want them to see me, I want them to see you." That is a truly remarkable level of commitment to authentically portraying his faith on screen. Section 5. Navigating Hollywood and Belief. The final takeaway. So the crucial point here, as we wrap up this explainer and step back to look at the big picture, is that navigating traditional values in the entertainment industry is highly, highly individualized. It exists on this massive spectrum. You have the casual or cultural connection, like George Clooney. You have those using it for personal grounding and passing on a sense of tradition, like Nicole Kidman. You have those integrating it directly into their family structure and project choices, like Patricia Heaton. And then you have those treating their very careers as active evangelism and vocation, like Jim Caviezel. We definitely aren't endorsing one way over the other here. We're simply neutrally observing the incredible, surprising variety of ways these massively public figures navigate their private beliefs.
I want to leave you with a completely fascinating metaphor that Jim Caviezel used when discussing his work. He noted that in life, just like in the movies, we all have roles. He said, some of us get to play Jesus, some get to play Paul, but some of us choose to play Judas, Pilate, Herod. He brilliantly connects the Hollywood concept of casting directly to the very human, everyday choices we make regarding our own character.
Which brings us to our final question for you, the viewer. Forget about the red carpets and the movie sets for a second. When you look at your own daily life, your own core values, and the actions you take every single day, in the short life you have, who are you choosing to play? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this structure helped you look at this topic in a whole new light. Keep learning, and I'll see you next time.